New Century Advisors chief economist Claudia Sahm is back with us, who you kind of warned us you thought it might be hawkish.
Well, yeah.
Would you go so far as to describe it that way?
I'm not sure if I would describe it as hawkish. I think the statement reinforces that they see risk to both higher unemployment and higher inflation. So the dual mandate and conflict. Now, that is a situation we have not seen the Powell Fed in before, and frankly, it's not one, thankfully, we've seen the Fed in very often. It's important that they really set the stage, and now it's going to be an opportunity for Powell to expand on what does that mean? How are we evaluating? It's not that they're putting more weight on inflation or on employment. These are co-equal in the dual mandate. It's just they're going to have to assess how far is inflation going off track, how far is unemployment going off track. And then an important thing that Powell also talked about in his April speech was, and then how quickly do we think they'll get back on track? Like, how much work does the Fed have to do? That's this big discussion about, is inflation persistent? So what we really need to hear from the Fed is just more about how are you thinking? What are you looking at? Because they're going to have to get back in the business of doing some forecasting, too.
Right. And we kind of mentioned this in passing, but there is this big budget bill out there that could have big effects on everything from the deficit to the near-term economy, the trajectory with which kind of tariffs affect all of that. So maybe that he'll be asked about that point blank. I don't know how big of a factor that will be.
Right. And the Fed has said, and Powell has said before, that they look at the totality of all the policy actions that are happening right now and everything else hitting the economy. Right. So they have mentioned the fiscal policy is important, too. And this is one where we're starting to get some more details. That will be interesting to see how that comes into the conversation. And, there could be policies that diffuse some of the inflation risk, maybe in the deregulation. So it's really important that we understand how the Fed is looking at the data, looking at the policies, and there's going to be, if the dual mandate's intention, it's going to come down to a judgment call, and we want to understand their judgment.
If you had a question, would it be the show your homework question? In other words, like, tell us exactly which data points. For instance, on inflation, do you take things like the ISM prices paid into high account or no? I mean, would that be the question, or would you do anything else on your mind that you'd ask him?
I think getting as much detail out of the Fed as we can in terms of what they look at. I really do want to hear from them the use of being more creative and pulling, like, how are you using some of the forward-looking, the kind of soft data measures? Like, how are you sifting through? Because there was, especially last year, there was kind of this, we'll wait and see. We have the luxury of time. We'll want more data. We knew every CPI release was really important, and we needed, probably not just one. We needed 3 good ones. And, that kind of answer, that's so heavy, backward-looking, data-dependent, will really put the Fed on a path to be behind the curve. We don't know which curve they might be behind, but, this is just going to be a very fluid situation and fast-moving. So the more they can tell us, what are you pulling in other than just CPI and the unemployment rate? We really need to have that information. I think that'll help us understand.
Great point. Claudia, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah,
Claudia Sahm of New Century Advisors.